the abuse is typically in sample preparation. If you try to measure in too high salt, and you don't need to be in high salt. If you're studying seawater, you need to be in high salt. There's a standard seawater I ran across, which is 1.15 molar salt. Physiological saline is about 155 millimolar, and you might have to be in that. But for a lot of work, you don't have to be in high salt. If you measure in high salt where you don't have to be, you collapse what's called the double layer. So the measured mobility and the calculated zeta potential are really small, but that's not what you're after. Zeta potential is determined by two things. One is in polar liquids, the free salt ion concentration. And if it's too high, the zeta potential is low, hard to measure. The other thing it's controlled by is the charge at the so-called shear plane, which is affected by the charge at the particle surface. That's what you want to know about, because it's that part of it that causes repulsion. So you're much better off measuring it like 1 millimolar salt. So one abuse is people will measure in too high of a salt concentration when they don't have to. Another one is when you want to put in a non-potential determining salt like sodium nitrate or potassium nitrate, they might foolishly put in something like a citrate ion or an acetate ion. Now, those often attach to the surface of some particles, changing the fundamental surface charge, changing the charge at the shear plane, changing the zeta potential. You want non-potential determining ions. Nitrate is a good one. Okay, here's another classic abuse. If you wanted to measure the zeta potential as a function of pH, figure out where the zeta potential, really the electrophoretic mobility, is 0. That's when there's no repulsion between particles. That's when you're most likely to get aggregation, because you've always got attraction, often due to van der Waals forces. I've seen some novices say, I'll measure at pH 3, 7, and 10, and I'll use standard pH calibrating liquids. Well, guess what? Those are the ones with the phosphate ions, the acetate, and some other ones. So you're not only changing pH, you're actually changing the surface. You should use potassium nitrate and nitric acid and sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide.